Okay, so we put together an implementation table. You can tell Mark loves goals. So we've got goals up here, and we're working on this. And these are actually in a document, by the way, which we'll share with you. And so I talked about the next year being the implementation. And so we've broken this into quarters. And so we have so much we're going to do. So what we're trying to do this year is we need to keep the ship afloat. So we need to do the things we plan to do this year, but we also need to add activities to be in a position of May of 2022 to move forward and when we go. So you'll see a combination here. Now in the May, July, which we're currently right now, you'll see the first 4 items up here are all about communication. And there is, in Lori's guidance, there is a very detailed communication plan that talks about a lot of the things that we're going to be doing. And so there's definitely a communication effort. This is obviously part of this. You'll see the event 1 sitting there. Okay. You also see the last item listed is NCC staff. We talked about them being in the middle and driving a lot of this. So all the NCC staff now have been assigned a responsibility for a resource group or a networking group or somewhere in that nature. They all know their assigned responsibilities to be able to, so the organization itself has been aligned to the new structure that we're talking about. The next 2 items, develop roles and responsibilities, is a forward item. We want to make sure each resource group knows what they're going to be focused on May of 2022. So the first thing we want you to do in quarter 1 in your resource group is to be able to spend some time, again, your NCC staff member will help you with this, to say, okay, what is this resource group really about? You got all those roles and responsibilities there, but depending on where your group is and whether your resource group is a combination of several committees or you're still the group you were, just we named you, is what are you going to be? What is the main items you're going to deliver? You need to deal with each one of the roles and responsibilities, but the extent will differ depending on the resource group. And so that's an item we want you to work on. You'll see why it's important to do that in the first quarter as I go on. But we also need for you to make sure you confirm what you're going to do this year. We're not taking the year off. So those events and those activities that you would normally plan, we will still move forward with those. Okay. Then we go to the next quarter. And you'll see, as Shawana mentioned earlier, that we're having 3 of these events. And so we're going to use these events to help move you along as we make our journey into implementation in May of 2022. And so we'll give you some more information, an update then about what you need to do in that quarter. But the main thing we'd like to do is twofold. One is, now since you defined your roles and responsibilities in the first quarter, and the second quarter, we want you to think about what do you want to achieve in 22, 23. And so you're going to start developing that action plan of the types of things that you want to achieve in the second quarter. We also want you to start thinking about term limits. Let me be clear what we mean on implementation. Okay, so what we're asking you to prepare is a plan for your resource group that effective May of 2022, you will know how your membership will evolve to the term limits of 3 years by 2025. So we're not asking you to do anything. We're not asking you to kick people off your committee. We're not asking you to do any of that. What we're saying is look at your current committee, see, do you have the right people for the roles and responsibilities you're trying to do? Okay. Maybe some of your current members that isn't what they really want to do. Maybe they joined it for a different reason. That's okay. Okay. There's plenty of opportunities in the association for volunteers to be able to work in. You also may identify you need some new members in that. And so think about how those term limits will phase in. Again, your staff member will be able to work with you and say, okay, you know, who has 1-year terms, who has 2-year terms, and who has 3-year terms to make that transition. So you actually have 3 years after the 2022 to actually have the total term transition in place. So it's not a cut and switch. So let's go to the next slide, Mark, and talk about quarter 3. Quarter 3, again, we have another one of these series as kind of an anchor pin so we can talk. Let you tell us what you hear, what's going on. Now, since you know your roles and responsibilities and you know what action plan, you're in a place to think about your budget. And that aligns with the association's timetable preparing their budget for the next fiscal year. We also want to make sure you're clear about who's going to lead your resource group going forward. And we also want you to think about volunteers. Now, since you know what your group's going to be doing, what your actions are planned, your resource group should sit down and say, okay, do we have the right people to take on this trip with us? And therefore start either recruiting or particularly make sure we know who is going forward leader in this area. And we go to the fourth quarter, and what about, you see an old familiar term again, Leadership Summit is coming back. And so we will have a leadership meeting with you in that quarter, as we normally would. We want to confirm the leadership going forward, and we confirm the action plan. So that last quarter is really about getting momentum going for the types of items, for the things that are left, they're not quite finalized, and all the things will be wrapped up in that last quarter. But you'll see major decisions in quarter one as to what is the resource group going to be focused on. Two is what are the detailed items that will happen. And then in the third quarter, what's the budget going to be there in leadership. And then also making sure you have a plan for term implementation, and as well as recruiting resources, volunteers. Okay, so Mark, let's move on. Okay, so these are some of the things we're doing. And this is a limited list. Okay, there's lots more things that we're doing in this area. We're having the leadership events like we're talking today. The committee chairs are going to meet with respective committees and talk about the changes. Okay, that's going to be happening between now and June 30. We're going to have a town hall meeting. The town hall meeting is in July, so that'll be after the committee chairs have had a chance to talk to your various resource groups and committees on that. And that town hall will give a chance not only to share information, continue to share information, but you ask questions that we can focus on. We've asked a couple of existing committees to move forward as a pilot, and it was a different combination of resource committees and some networking groups, people that we thought we could learn from. So there's going to be a group of committees moving forward as resource groups, networking groups, but that's going to be a little faster, going a faster timetable than everyone else, so we can learn from and we can share those best practices across. We've developed some white papers to help people understand. I mentioned earlier that timetable I gave you is the resource groups and networking group implementation group that's laid out in that document that we'll share with the resource groups. And we understand, again, term limits is a sensitive issue, but we wanted to provide some help. And so we put together a pathways guide to revised model, and that is helping people understand there's a lot of volunteer activities going on in the association and helping people identify where else. A lot of people sort of enter an association on one committee, never leave that committee, and they don't have a bigger picture of all the great activities that are going on in the association. We want to make it very clear of all the various activities that were available, that when your time comes up for you to rotate off that resource group, you'll know where you can go. And two things I want to focus on in that area. One is the time off the resource group is just 1 year. It's just 1 year. And it doesn't mean that the resource group can't talk to you during the 1 year. So if you have particular expertise or knowledge about what's going on, there is nothing that means task force can continue to talk to. It's not intended that it's a total dead silence in that particular period of time. We've also put together some SWAT teams. By the way, we don't have all the answers to the questions. I'll just admit that up front. And so you're going to raise really good questions, and some of them will have answers and some of them we won't. And we'll get back to you. When you have questions and we don't have answers, we will get back to you. And to help the teams, we know these situations are going to come up. We create the NCC staffs create a SWAT team, and they're going to work between the various groups to help share information and to help solve issues when they come up that really didn't think about. There's only so much of this you could think about when you put it all together. And we've also, again, the association, as well as putting some activities to recruit new volunteers, but it is also a responsibility of the groups as well.